Welcome, everybody, to the Fighting and Finance podcast. I'm your host, Parsa Vahid. I'm joined today by the one and only Archie Colgan. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it, my man.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me,
Parsa. Thank you. So let's just continue on the conversation that we were having. You were telling me about your fight contract. You got 4 fights. You've done 2 of them. You've had a fucking amazing performance. And for those of you who don't know Archie or may not have heard of him, let me tell you, if you don't mind, let me kind of paint a backstory and you can fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
I've been going to the gym here in Denver. It's a local gym, Elevation Fight Team, and I'm blessed enough to kind of get access to see some of these fighters spar. And obviously I would never talk about any of the technical side, but just I can tell you there are a few fighters in that gym that catch my eye, and one of those is Archie Colgan. I was watching him move. I had no idea who he was, but I was fucking floored at the movement, the feints, the ability to just take someone down and control them. And so I just started asking around the gym who he was. They told me. I reached out, and here he is. So again, thanks so much for coming. I want to also, real quick, know a little bit about your backstory. So I know you've got this big wrestling background, but were other athletics, other sports huge to you, or was it just wrestling?
It was just wrestling. Like, competitively for me, it was just wrestling. But I was always a big fan of all sports, really. Not so much basketball, baseball. Definitely not baseball, unfortunately. Or hockey. But like, football, I never played. But I was, for like a couple years in late middle school, early high school, I was a big fan of football. I wouldn't miss a game. And then always MMA and boxing. I really liked those. I remember for years I'd ask my dad if I can like join a boxing gym. Obviously, I tried to fool him almost like he wouldn't know that I would be like, all right, let me just do it just to work out. But I really wanted to like box.
Yeah.
And he said no, which I'm thankful he did at the time, just because, I think the timing that I joined MMA and taking damage to the head, I was 24, so my brain was fully developed at that point.
Yeah.
Versus 10 years old, 12 years old, 13.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of damage and miles that can get added there.
Sure. And so you wrestled. Where did you grow up?
Here in Denver.
Here in Denver.
In Westminster.
Okay, nice. Yeah, as a guy who is not from here, I got to say, what a fucking awesome city, man. I love Denver.
Yeah, Denver's cool.
I grew up in L.A., Orange County my whole life. Okay. And my family and I got 2 daughters, as I mentioned, and my wife, we decided to move out here about a year and a half ago. And coming from California, I thought it was the most magical place. And honestly, it's got the best of everything in terms of weather and the beach, but it just went to shit, and it got crazy expensive. So we came out here, and I was very reluctant to experience like the winter and the whole culture, but we've been very, very happy with what we've seen, and we love it here, man. It's an awesome
when did you
place.
move?
July of 21.
Okay, so the COVID time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was that kind of prompted the move as well, is because I had to shut my business virtual. I mean, I went virtual, and we shut our offices down, but there was no loss in efficiency or production in my business. So I realized I could work from anywhere, like this. I've always thought I could, but this was just proved it to me.
Yeah.
So I moved my business out here. I still have my staff in California. We all work remote. Some of them are in the office, and it works great. I mean, that's literally my office right there, what you see.
That's sweet.
Yeah, so
nice.
We love it, man. It's been cool, but I'm a huge fight fan, massive. One of the biggest you can imagine, just because I watch a lot of fights. I watch most of all the UFC cards from top to bottom if I can.
Yeah.
I'll watch some Bellator fights if they intrigue me. I've watched the last couple of yours. Not much to watch.
Yeah.
But just a huge fan. And so thank you for coming on. I really want to dissect your thought process and what your plans are for the future of your career. So if you don't mind just kind of telling me, as I mentioned, you got these 2 fights down. Do you have an idea as to when and who you want to fight next?
So after this last fight, so just to like back information, I just fought almost 2 weeks ago, not even 2 weeks ago yet, in Chicago. And I called out, he's a top 10 guy. He's a veteran. He's got like 20 fights. I'm now 6. professional fights, and called him out after the fight. I also called out another guy who's 5-0, but I really wanted the guy
Peter
who's top
Queally?
10. He's Peter Queally. That's the top 10 guy. He's ranked like number 9 or 8. Recently talked to my manager a couple of days ago. That's a no-go. So
what
that
happened? Why?
I don't know.
They said no?
Maybe it could be. There's so many like people who could say no. I'm not gonna say it's him.
I see.
It could also be Bellator who said they don't want to do that.
I see.
But he just said it's a no-go, so that's fine.
Okay.
But the other guy that I had called out or had talked about was a guy that I had previously accepted a short notice fight for. So my last fight in July, I got a call from my manager, and he said, "Hey, do you want to take this fight on 3 weeks' notice?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." The other guy is 5-0 at the time, and I was 4-0. And then he pulled out of the fight after I had accepted, finding out later that he actually was injured and got surgery and stuff. So unfortunate for him, but I want to get that fight back.
Was that at 170 or was that lightweight too?
That one would have been 55. Yeah.
Then did someone just make a mistake on, I don't know which interview, because I just watched a lot of your shit in the past day, but someone said welterweight. Have you fought at welterweight?
Yeah, I have. This fight was my first time at 155.
How was that cut?
It was tough.
It was tough?
It was tough for sure, yeah.
What do you walk around at?
Right now, I'm probably like 185.
With like very little fat.
Yeah. I'm a little juicy right now.
I mean, do you think you can consistently make that cut?
Yeah.
To 155? Yeah.
Yeah.
I had Jalen Turner on yesterday, and the connection I have with Jalen is that when I used to live in Orange County, Jalen's current striking coach and who has been his coach for the past few years was my coach, who I just hired to train me. And I flew them out. We had them on. We had a good ass time. But he's also a lightweight, obviously.
Yeah.
And
he's like 6'3".
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to put his shit on blast, but we went out to eat yesterday. We ate again at my house, and we had we're watching the U.S.-Iran soccer game. And I'm thinking, this motherfucker is not eating the healthiest. How is he able to, make that fucking weight? Because I don't eat the healthiest, but it's obvious that I don't work out as much as you guys.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to get to 155, and I have no muscle on my body to carry, the weight. So I'm just curious always about how the weight cut is. He went into detail because I'm always fascinated by what a weight cut entails. Do you mind telling me a little bit about your process, starting from the Monday that you head into fight week? Yeah.
So I for Bellator actually, I think UFC actually usually gets in on Tuesday. Like you fly in to whatever location you're at, because they're on a Saturday, but Bellator is on a Friday, so I get in on a Monday. So I get in probably like 3 o'clock this last time, and then immediately I had to go do a weight check and check in. I checked in, I think I was like 173 and a half or 174 on that Monday. And then I got a nice light little workout that night. And then I have a nutritionist, and she does breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me for that fight week, and then we take out all the sodium from the meals. There might be a little bit in the a power bar or something, like 40 milligrams or something like that. But the actual meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, there's no sodium in the food.
She cooks it for you too, or
okay. Yeah. So actually, if you didn't know this, you can take whatever a cooler full of cooked meals and pass it through security. You can't take drinks, but you can take all your own meals with you and pass it through security perfectly fine.
Oh, that's pretty badass.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't either until the first time I did it. But yeah, she cooked all my meals in here in Denver, and then I flew them out with me. So then it's just really low calorie food, but enough to keep the energy up and keep you moving, keep you feeling good until obviously you're not going to feel good anymore, but that's just universal. So no sodium. So you're slowly dropping weight throughout the week. I'm drinking 2 gallons of water on Monday. The whole week prior to fight week, I'm drinking 2 gallons every day.
Okay.
And then Monday I drink 2 gallons. Tuesday I drink 1.5 gallons. And then Wednesday, which is my weight cut day because I weigh in on Thursday.
Oh, right. Okay.
I cut out water. I drink about 1 liter of water before noon, and then nothing after that until after weigh-ins.
So, yeah, because, sorry to cut you off. Jalen was saying Thursday at 3 p.m. is when everything is shut off.
Yeah.
Yours would make sense to be Wednesday at noon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's really the same. It's just a day difference.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then nothing. And then you're just trying to cut that weight. How do you like to cut the weight?
So this, I'm a sauna guy.
Yeah, he
I
was
like the
too.
sauna. I think a lot of people like the bath. It's a little more universal because, like, if you flew out to Italy or something, you don't know for sure if they're gonna have a sauna. Actually, sometimes you don't even know if they're gonna have a bath in your
Yeah,
hotel.
yeah.
But that's more likely to have a bath than the sauna. So I like the sauna. I've just through the wrestling background. That's just what you grew up on.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why I'm comfortable cutting weight. So I prefer the sauna. But I actually had to do both this time. So I saunaed on Wednesday night, but I was still over when I went to bed. Woke up and I had to get another 2 pounds off in the morning. And, you know, I'm not going to go all the way to the LA
Yeah.
Fitness at 6 a.m.
What
so.
about these sauna bags I see that people have in their rooms?
Yeah.
Is that the same thing?
The little portable ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're nice. I have one of those at the house. I don't want to fly it all the way out
I
there.
get it.
When I know they're going to have sauna. They're nice, but I don't know. I prefer a normal sauna. I see the, like, you know, because like the water pocket in the head is a thing that people think of. Like, there's a pocket of water that helps you from getting knocked out, really.
Yeah, absorb shots.
Yeah, it helps
Yeah.
you absorb the shots.
I believe in
better.
that. I've seen so many drastic weight cuts and then they just can't take anything. They can't
Yeah.
take any shot.
Yeah.
And then he was also mentioning the fact that his person who helps him cut, because he used to cut it all the night before and just go to sleep and sleep dehydrated.
Yeah.
But the nutritionist advised don't be in that state for too long. So try to cut as much as you can in the morning and not, you know, leave your body so dehydrated for so long. The duration's important.
Yeah.
All these things are, you know, they're fairly new. They have to be fairly new. This sport is fucking new. But actually, in wrestling, weight cutting has been around, right?
Yeah, for a long time.
A long time. You know, it's interesting because I was on the wrestling team for 2 weeks, just in between like basketball.
Yeah.
And I knew like I'm too much of a bitch. This sport is too fucking insane. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
I was
intense.
always like a ball sports guy. I thought I could wrestle. I'm athletic. No, there's, you know, levels of toughness, and I just readily can admit I don't have.
You're like, I'm not that.
I
I'm
don't
not-
have that, but I know I was exposed to it. I gave it my all, and I know that in my opinion, it's the most difficult sport, and I have so much respect. And my country is big in wrestling, and,
Yeah.
and it, like
Which country?
Iran.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, they're big in wrestling.
Iran's honestly like, obviously when it comes time to the world stuff, I'm gonna go for the American team. But like Iran's fun to watch because they're like they have cool chants. Have you ever watched like a world championship? And
Yeah,
they-
yeah.
You know they got
Iran.
Iran.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
we're,
cool.
We're very prideful about that because we're an ancient culture. We've been around for thousands of years. Like, we're talking about our ancestry.com, and everyone was like 57% this or 80, maybe 80%, but I was like 97% Persian. You know, I was like,
Yeah.
this is what I am.
You're like,
you know?
I'm right here.
But and wrestling is such a big part of our history. You know,
Yeah.
we've been doing it for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
They're good at it too.
Yeah, and there's so much technique, and to like the naked eye, I don't know if I would consider myself the naked eye because I do understand certain positions and underhooks and overhooks and leverage, but I'm obviously nowhere near an expert.
Yeah.
But I think, let me ask you this question. If I watch the sport as I have been for the past 5 for the next 10, don't you think that my eye will be the equivalent of someone who maybe has wrestled? Or do you think having had wrestled, you have maybe the touch in your mind and the nuances of the sport and you can articulate it better than maybe someone who just maybe have the same duration of experience watching but not the same exposure doing?
For wrestling or
For wrestling
like,
specifically.
yeah. Wrestling is I think wrestling's a hard one. Like wrestling, I feel like you almost had to have tried it to fully understand. Like because in fighting, right, if I punched you with a good right hand, universally anybody understands
Right.
what that means and
Yeah.
what that feels like, right?
Right.
Maybe not what it feels
Feels
like, but
like
what it does, right? The repercussions of a punch
Right.
is. But, you know, like in a wrestling match, I don't think people fully understand what like 7 minutes of wrestling does, or 6 minutes of
Crazy.
me pulling on your head
Woo!
over and over. You're like, why is he so tired? But
It's
for the last
grueling.
4 minutes, this guy's pulling on his head, pulling on his head, pulling on his head, and now he can't hardly stay in the stance. It's like, why is he so tired? So it's a little. I feel like wrestling is almost like you had to have tried it to actually like understand why it's so hard. Because if you look at a wrestling match, it's 6 minutes, right? In high school and the world team stuff. And in college wrestling, it's 7 minutes. 6-7 minutes isn't that long of a time. You got a 15-minute fight, 25 if you're a championship. You got a 60-minute football game, right? But that's 6 minutes.
Full exertion.
Is like, yeah, you literally wring the shirt as much water as you can get out of it.
It's full.
Yeah.
And we actually, God bless his soul, I think his name was Liebig, Coach Liebig. He was like, in my high school, we had a big wrestling program. And he always had like a soft spot for me, I think because I was Persian. Like he knew the history of Persian wrestling. So he wanted me so bad to be, but I just didn't have the love for it then.
Yeah.
But I know now and I respect now, and I've always said this to whoever wants to hear it, that wrestling I think is absolutely the best base to have in MMA, because not so much of the fighting aspect, but because it just irons your mind. It builds this level of toughness, and you motherfuckers are psycho.
Yeah.
You really are. To go through those practices, God bless. I'll never forget those fucking, he put it like 105 degrees. I'm like, you're trying to kill us, dude.
He's like,
You're trying to kill us. Yeah, but
he's like, yeah.
But again, and I very readily admit that I didn't have what it takes to be great. So I respect what it takes to be great so much.
Yeah.
So when would you like to fight next?
I still would like to fight in February next. So that would Dublin card that I just was ideally trying to get on, but is probably a no-go. It was February 25th or 24th, something like that, whatever that weekend is. So if that's not doable, there is another card February like 4th or 5th at the beginning of February, which is in Los Angeles, and I'd like to get on that too.
Nice.
So I want to fight in February. Just honestly, just me. I want to fight. I want to be active. I'm 27 years old. I got a kid.
Yeah.
I actually have another kid on the way.
Congratulations, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome, man.
You know, I gotta provide, and I have goals and ambitions and things that I want to get to. You know, I'm 27 years old, and before I know it like that, I'm going to be 37. And then, did I do it or not? Is going to be the question. Yeah. And I want to be the guy who says I did it.
You speak like a person. I'm 37, and I'm imagining my 27-year-old self, but I came from a different path. It was more like the corporate life, and you have everything, I think, mentally, to be successful in it. You want to work hard. You want to take fights. I see the work ethic. I see what people say about you around the gym. I'm excited to see your career, my man. I really am. Thank you. I saw that you're also not only training with Gaethje, but Kamaru had you in Salt Lake in that last camp and in that last travel. What's that relationship like?
So that started, it stemmed from the relationship probably with Gaethje. I was a training partner of Gaethje's. Mm-hmm. And then Kamaru decided, I think that was the Gilbert Burns fight, when he decided that he was going to move to Denver and start doing his training camps out here with Trevor. And when he started coming out here, he started going to the same practices that I was going to. We're relatively the same size. He's a little bit bigger than me, but we just became training partners, and he found out, that I was willing to push myself is to see how good I can be, Like when we would spar together, I think some people were almost intimidated by him because he's number one pound for pound. He's, 3-time champ, knocking people out. He's, he's who he is.
Yeah.
And, I was willing to just try to see what can Archie Colgan do against the guy who is number one pound for pound.
Do you think if you didn't go through wrestling, that thought would have crossed your mind? Or do you think wrestling shaped that thought that I could let me see what I could do against Kamaru Usman? Yeah,
I think wrestling is the key to it for me. I'm not saying that other people who didn't wrestle can't find that too, but for me, it is. And we come from a similar background. He's a college wrestler. I'm a college wrestler. He's Nigerian. My mom is born and raised in Ghana, right? Very close to each other. So we just have African Thai backgrounds, wrestling backgrounds. Now, I think he sees a lot of the same things that he had went through in the same journey that I'm going through so far. But when I was in those situations, man, I was just like, what's the worst thing that happens? The number one pound for pound guy beats me? Yeah. No shit. I'm 2 years into my career. Yeah. I've had at the time, I think I had 2 or 3 pro fights. I'm like, no shit, the number 1 pound for pound guy in the world beats you.
Yeah.
But like at best case, you know, I'm gonna get so much better and I'm gonna learn from it. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna win the rounds because I'm probably not.
Yeah.
But in testing myself, I'm gonna build a lot of confidence if I can find good things that I do in it.
Yeah.
And also like what happened out of it. Like he was willing to be like, oh shit, this young guy isn't afraid of me. He's not gonna push back. He is gonna push back. He's not gonna fold. He's not, you know, and in doing that, he was like, I want that guy to be my partner. You know, because he's gonna push me. He's gonna be accountable, and you know, he'll like keep me safe, because that's another thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like trusting your partner.
For sure.
You know, and some people are reckless.
Yeah, yeah.
Some people are really reckless. They wanna win in practice rather than both of you get better or learn something. You know.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's smart that you have that. Did you also think that you gained anything from just being exposed to him, you know, fighting Leon, traveling with him, being, you know, whatever, I have no idea, but I'm assuming there's the media obligations and the pressure are so magnificent, but you were right there and you got a little taste of it. Talk me through what that experience was like.
I mean, you hit it right on the head, honestly, because like the fight week stuff is like extensive for the champion. You know, they don't take it easy on the champion.
Really, like in terms of media obligation?
Yeah, they don't be like, hey man, we're gonna send you 5, 10, 15 Zoom links and you just chill in your bed at your house. And they're like, all right, wherever you're at, you got to come over to the facility and you're gonna do these Zoom meetings. And you know, there's probably, if we were there from Monday till he weighs in Friday, so he had probably 2 or 3 days of like 4 hours straight of like media obligations, you know,
while you're trying to cut weight, while you're training, I'm assuming at least once or twice.
So he would do his just one training session at the time he would fight. So we would work out, you know, 11 o'clock at night, something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it makes sense. Like he gets to sleep in a little bit, and then he'll go to do all his media obligations, come back, relax, hang out a little bit, and then go to work. But like, you know, that's extensive. You got to, especially we stayed off site.
Yeah.
We were staying in the house. It was like 25, 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
So, you know, we had to drive there. That's an hour there and back. You know, it's plus traffic. And he's got 3, 4, or 5 hours of media obligations. Plus he got to go check in. Plus he's got to go sit down and sign these posters. We were there for like 5 hours. You know, he's signing posters. They got a stack of posters like this. He got to sign every single one of them. Yeah. And then right after that, you got to go check in and do his weight check and his. And then he's got to go do photo shoot. And then he's got to go over here and go do. Everybody who's a media guy wants to do,
of course,
him and their media. So he's getting questions from everybody. You know, so it's like extensive. But for me, just being a fly on the wall, you know, I'm not gonna wait. I'm just chilling. I'm just doing whatever he needs me to do. I get to watch it all, and I'm like, man. It excites me a little bit, you know, because like part of this journey also is the glory that comes behind it. Of course, even though it's like you dread it, like when in the position that he's in, I'm sure he dreads it. But there's part of him that just loves it. There's part of him that was me one day and was like, man, you know, I want people to be asking me questions all day. And I want people to want to be taking pictures of me. I want people to want my autograph. I want, you know, and all that stuff adds up. So from my perspective, looking at it, I'm like, damn, you know, this is cool for me to see that before I can try and achieve it myself. You know, I can like, I know what it's like firsthand.
It's like visualization almost, you know?
Yeah.
You know what to expect, hopefully, when that day comes for you, and you'll be able to be a little bit more calm in that situation.
Ideally.
A couple of things that were going through my head when I was just thinking of you, because that 10-year thing really stuck out to me. Just that year number 27. 10 years ago, I was 27. 10 years ago, I was busting my ass to kind of excel in the corporate world. And 27 was right when like I had a little first big break, made my first little bit of money, you know. But unlike you, I didn't have kids. You know, I was like a wild single guy, started to make money, started to do the wrong things. And I'm still very successful relative. But I feel like had I had my family that I have now to kind of keep me grounded and keep me focused, I would have been double where I am now in my life, just because I lost maybe, you know, 5 years. I've only had a family. So those other 5 years, if I had a family, who knows what type of growth I would have had. Yeah. How has your family played a role in keeping you grounded and you mentioned that you want to give them a good life. Is that the motivating factor for you?
It's one of them,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. You know, like I'm going to be completely honest. When I got into the sport, it's solely selfish. Of I want to be the best athlete that I can be, right? So and that's still goal number one. It's not like, hey, I want to make so much money that, you know, my kids don't have to work or something like that. Like my goal strictly for fighting, because I can go be a business professional and make good money,
Sure.
and provide for my kids. My goal in fighting, first and foremost, is that it's a selfish version. I want to be the best fighter that I can be. That's
so
number one.
badass. Okay.
And two, with being the best fighter comes some financial pay, right? So with that, I want to take care of my family. So it's definitely something important to me to be able to fund, take care of, and make sure my family is well taken care of and just looked after. But I don't want anybody to get it twisted that I'm thinking I'm chasing the money, because I'm chasing the glory that I want out of this game. I want to be good. I want to be great.
I appreciate the answer, and I appreciate the honesty, and I think that you have to have that mentality if you want to be successful.
Yeah.
I feel the same in the way that I look at it. I mean, my kids are going to have a nice life relative no matter what.
Yeah.
But I do it because I want to test myself in business, in motivation, and these type of things. Can you talk to me about, if you were to kind of take a look at your situation in Bellator and, you know, what they're providing you? We talked a little bit about this off air, but what's the goal in the next 3 to 6 years in your career?
Yeah. So by 3 years, so that would be 30 years old. That's cool. You know?
Yeah.
I want to be a world champion in the next 3 years. And I really think that's like a feasible goal in Bellator. So I want to climb the ranks of that, beat whoever I have to beat. I don't know what's going to happen or who they're going to help or provide for me to fight against. But, you know, I think that's a very doable goal for myself. I want to hold the world title, and then I would like to ideally defend it. And then we'll kind of see what happens after that. Like, you know, Bellator would be dope if I can win it and defend it. You know, I would like to maybe also test out other waters and see if I can win and defend the other belt, in like a UFC or something like that.
Sure.
But right now, I'm in Bellator, and I would like to build myself through the organization, win that belt, and defend that belt.
In terms of winning and getting through to the belt and the championship, how many more fights do you think realistically? I mean, your past few performances were, for those who don't know, like 40-second knockout. What was the one before that?
That one was actually third round. The 2 fights ago was a third round. Yeah.
And then you had another one where it was a very early first round finish. So assuming you have performances like that where they're dominating and you showcase your skills, how many more fights do you think you have?
I think that's tough, because I think, like, if I really start to do the same sort of thing to higher calibered people, it could be really quick, right? Like in the next year quick. If I go and fight 4 times next year and all 4 fights go similar to how those are, but, you know, this guy's right on the bubble, and then the next guy's in the top 10, and then the next guy's in the top 7, and the next guy's in the top 5, then probably that next fight, it would happen. And that also kind of depends on if Bellator's matchmaker lets me fight those fights. So I think maximum 3 years.
Maximum 3 years.
But minimum, it can be probably as quick as like 14 months.
So early 24 maybe. Or late 23.
Yeah.
That'll be badass.
That would.
I believe in you, man. And I'm not just saying this because you're standing here. I will fucking tell you, you know, if I didn't think so.
Yeah.
You're a badass fighter, man. You really are. It's really fun to watch you. I think a year is very reasonable. And that kind of leads to another question is, I'm always fascinated by, you know, like the career trajectory and picking your opponent. And there are some fighters who are just like, I'll take anyone, anytime, any place. There's pros and cons to that, obviously. And then there are some who are very picky and choosy as to when and who they fight. Where do you fall in that?
I fall in that I, as a fighter, say yes to anybody that they bring to me, and I let my coaches decide if we're gonna do this or not.
Who are
Because
your
I think
coaches?
Justin Salas and Peter Straub.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
where do they train you out of?
we're a little bit all over the place. We're a little bit all, but yeah. So I train at a Genesis Training Academy.
Okay.
And then I spar over at High Altitude, which is
That's where I saw you.
team.
Yep.
And then I also will train at like Onyx with Justin and Kamaru and Coach Trevor Whitman. And then I do jiu-jitsu at Easton's.
And okay, got it. Yeah. So you all are all over. It's funny. I had a guy from Lando Performance.
I do strength and conditioning at
Oh,
Lando.
do you? You know Aaron Porter?
Yeah, that's my coach.
Oh no, that's
Yeah.
okay. So I have a little bit of a back issue, and Rich put me in touch with Aaron. I started just going to Aaron to kind of strengthen my core and not be such a fucking slob. But that reminds me, I got to sit up straight. Anyways,
Look at me all laying.
but at least you have a strong core. I'm not there yet. But anyways, what the fuck was I saying? I forgot my train of thought.
Aaron Porter core.
Oh yeah. So Aaron. Jesus, what was I saying about Aaron? Oh, okay, here we go. Aaron was telling me that I asked him about, because obviously I know he trains with the high-level athletes. I said, where do you see the sport going in the next 10 years? And he said exactly what your situation is. He said, I think the sport will grow where there'll be more all-inclusive MMA gyms where athletes won't have to fucking drive all over town to get all of their training needs.
Yeah.
And there are some athletes that like have the luxury of the PI where they could just go in, get everything done, and they leave. How far away do you think we are from that? Because the sport, I'm telling you, man, the sport's growing exponentially. I personally see it a lot sooner than I think most.
Yeah. So the PI, if I'm not mistaken, I think the PI is only if you're a UFC athlete.
Correct.
Right. And so I don't know if they like will allow you to be like, I'll pay a $200 membership if I can go do my trainings there. Right. I don't know if they're like will open it up to people or if it's just like, hey, look, you're a UFC fighter and he could bring one or two other people, but like you have to be a UFC fighter to train there. So the PI stuff, which would be tough, would only kind of supply the UFC fighters, but there's so many other fighters that also train that would need that opportunity. So like I feel like then it would have to be like big corporations would have to
start building the facility.
Kind of have to build these
well,
facilities.
like High Altitude has their new facility. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it's apparently going to be badass. Yeah. And I think of like AKA and
some of those places like Sanford. Well, it's no longer Sanford. It's Killcliff.
Yeah.
And then like ATT.
Yeah.
Like they got big stuff where I think they have all their stuff in
shop,
there.
right?
But they're like produced by big people, like Killcliff FC, right?
I see.
So Killcliff funds everything. Or when it was Sanford Medical funded everything. They built.
Oh, that's the name. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So what is it? A medical device company or something?
I think it's just like the medical. It's like a medical. I don't even know. I don't know. But it runs out of South Dakota, and they have like, I think it's a hospital.
What the fuck were they trying to market a fight team for?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either. That's interesting. It's so strange.
I don't know. I think more maybe it's probably for the rich person. It's a little tax write-off. And
there's way better tax write-offs, my friend. I mean, that maybe the guy just was a huge fan. Like the guy in ATT, isn't he just a huge fan?
But he's like super rich, so that's another a big corporate.
I get it. I can understand that.
So it's like hard to come by, right?
Yeah.
If you're like Walmart, to be like, hey,
yeah,
don't build a Walmart, build this. You know, they got to see the benefit in it. And I feel like a lot of people probably wouldn't see it. So I agree that it should be like that because then it's almost like you're real professional, right?
Yeah.
You go to this place and you get everything done, you bounce. But I just don't think the money is there right now or probably in the next 10 years. I don't know what's the biggest difference between like an NFL? Like why does NFL make so much money?
I think that there's two factors. First, the general public has to be a little bit more educated on the nuances of fighting, and then they'll appreciate it more, much like my trajectory of fanhood was. You don't have to necessarily train, but if you are just more educated as to, what it looks like to have distance and throw a beautiful right hook or whatever, like fake the takedown like you do that opens up your striking, and just understand a little bit of the nuances of the sport, which will take time. Again, we're talking about a 25-year-old sport versus a 100-year-old sport. So I think inevitably that will happen. And then I think this fighter pay shit that I'm a huge advocate of, I think if the fighters got paid more in terms of aggregate percentage of revenue, then you're going to get better athletes, you're going to get more money in the sport, and the product, which would be good fights, will be better, and then the masses will come in. You're going to get more superstars, more sponsorships, and I just think that's going to take time. And so that 10-year window, I think is what I'd be looking at in terms of this being up there with maybe not the NBA, NFL, but it's right behind it. And in terms of revenue, I actually just looked this up. I think it's the numbers are NBA is like 8 or 9 billion in revenue, NFL is like 12 or 13, NHL's 5, and the UFC in 2021 just surpassed $1 billion. They finally did it. So they're doing about 20% of the NHL now. I wouldn't be surprised if they're doing 50% of the NHL in a few years.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Just if they continue this growth trajectory. If you just take a look at their revenue, it was like 680 in 2017, and they're already well over $1 billion. And with the 2022 numbers are going to come out soon. What if it's like $1.5 billion? I mean, that's a huge jump.
Yeah, I think it would be too. Since 2017, is that the last number you got? Was 2017?
2016. I don't remember that exact number. I just have weird numbers that stick out in my head.
Well, since like 2017 is what you said the 1 billion was.
No, 2021 was the first time they went over $1 billion.
Okay.
But in 2017 it was like 613. So they've almost doubled it in that time. So I mean, from a business perspective, like my business is relative to most other businesses is growing way faster, but it's nowhere near the growth of the UFC. If we were to extrapolate that percentage wise, like I'd be sitting on millions of dollars right now,
Yeah.
But
that's true. Yeah. I mean, so if they bring in that, but the problem that people talk about with fighter pay and stuff, right, is that like an NFL pays 50% out.
Exactly.
Right? And I think you're probably better than me at this, but I think it's like 19 or something, right?
17.5 was the last number that was official, and that was actually brought to light by Rob Macy, who I've spoken to. He's the lead attorney of the UFC antitrust lawsuit, the class action lawsuit. He's the head attorney for that. So as I mentioned off air, I'm just the fucking guy who's persistent and nosy. I call these guys, and it takes me time to get them on the phone, but I've had all these calls. And yeah, man, it should be closer to 50%. The MLB, NHL, NFL, NBA are all 48 to 54. And then I've heard one dumb fuck tell me, oh, but what about like it's individual sports? And then I was like, okay, let me look that up. The PGA is actually 55%. And they're making a shit ton of money. So why the fuck are fighters getting 17.5? And maybe it is 19. Maybe I haven't.
No, you're probably better than me, honestly. I just
so
thought
it's
it was
like
somewhere around
that
there.
is so ridiculous. And no offense to other athletes. I mean, I respect other sports, but it ain't the same. It's not the same. You're getting fucking punched in the head. You're getting your body, getting taken damage. And you have a probably a shorter career than maybe a tennis player or a golfer.
For sure.
So it's just not fair, man. And I really feel for fighters. I know Bellator does a better job than the UFC in terms of percentage of revenue that they pay out.
Yeah. Do you have that number?
I don't. I've just heard that it's above 25.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and Scott Coker, I don't know Scott. I don't know Dana. But just from an outside perspective, like I respect Scott Coker human-wise, like as a friend and a colleague. And I respect Dana more as a cutthroat businessman, which I also think there's value in having those motherfuckers around, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just always interesting.
Probably, I mean, respectfully, just to play devil's advocate here, like, I mean, you're in the business world, right? Like, a little bit for the UFC to have grown to where it is right now, over $1 billion, you need to be that business guy.
100%. And I've said this, and I'm glad you brought this up. I've said this before. I respect the UFC.
Yeah.
I envy how they are able to run their business. I've taken notes. They went out and they would buy their competitors when they saw the competitive market was starting to grow, and some may call that a monopoly. I think that was great business practice.
Like Strikeforce?
WC, Strikeforce,
yeah.
Pride. In the past year, I've bought other businesses, and I don't know whether it was me learning that, but that definitely played a pivotal factor in me taking the huge financial risk and the fear, the substantial amount of money out of my pocket to buy another business. I don't know if it's going to be successful, but these are all business tactics that I respect about the UFC. However, as a fight fan and as someone who's going in there rubbing shoulders with people like you, and I'm like, let me be the ambassador and representative in some sort, any way that I can, and be like, you know what? Let me use my business acumen and tell the fighters where you can hurt the UFC, and it's only going to be their bottom line. And here's how you do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hopeful that we can do, and it will take time. I ain't got nothing but time, baby.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to take years, but I've had multiple fighters on. We've had these conversations, and sometimes I look at some fighters and I'm like, you guys aren't even trying to negotiate the right thing. I had one fighter on, he was like talking about health insurance, and I had to explain to him that fuck health insurance. Like, the health insurance, you probably help pay for it for your family.
Yeah.
It's a cost, right? It's, for a good health insurance plan for a family, you're looking at $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that in the drop of the bucket in terms of percentage of revenue? Imagine you're going from 17.5% to 50%. $20,000 is going to be what you piss out of your fucking asshole, So stop trying to negotiate health insurance. And I only know this because my company does health insurance, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, the fighters don't even know what they're negotiating for.
Yeah.
I think instead of health insurance, let's try to negotiate guarantees built into the contract. And that's where my insurance policy comes in. So that hey, listen, maybe we're not getting 50-50, maybe we're getting 30, but now we have these guarantees built in because we've all banded together and we said, hey, UFC, we're not fighting or we're going to do this unless you give us X, Y, and Z. We want these guarantees so that we get injured. We're not going to have to go drive an Uber and a Lyft, nursing our injury. We're full-time fighters. We're going to do whatever it takes to get better, rehab, watch film, but we're fucking full-time fighters.
Yeah.
And it just bothers me, man, because I'm like, I want to grab the roster and be like, here's what you guys need to do. Let me help you do that. But I don't have a big platform, so I just kind of have to have these one-off conversations.
But the hard part about that with an individual sport like fighting is it's just like it's cutthroat in the other way, right? Yeah. Like if me and you are also fighting and I'm like, let's say they got a title shot, they offered it to me and I'm number 2 and you're number 4, right? And right now you're getting paid 100 and 100.
Yep.
And I'm like, if I'm gonna take this title fight, I want $300,000 for this fight. And they're like, nah, best we can do is 200. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. I need 300. And they're like, all right, well then we're gonna call our boy Parsa over here. And they call you, and you're normally making 100, and they're like, we'll offer you 200, 250, right? Because that's a little bit more than what you're making. Oh, got it.
Here, you make a great point.
So that's the hard part.
But let me tell you what my thoughts are, and I'm fascinated to hear your response because you seem very intelligent and more well-versed than some of the other people that I've spoken to about this subject. Here's the reverse devil's advocate.
Yeah.
You're talking about one-off negotiations, and the UFC and Bellator has the upper hand. If you always negotiate from a position of power, you're going to get the best outcome. And so instead of UFC or Bellator fighters trying to negotiate one-off and against the other fighter, there needs to be a separation of the fighter mentality of I'm against you and the business mentality, which is let's all band together. Yeah. We are the product.
I agree.
And if you don't put on the product the UFC cannot generate revenue.
I agree.
And the UFC, and this is where a little bit, I don't want to sound cocky because I'm not a cocky person, but I'll tell you from my experience, when you sell or buy a company, you have massive debt obligations. And we won't get into the specifics, but the UFC has to make money to pay back these debt obligations, or else shit hits the fan very fast.
Yeah.
Very, very fast. Within 3 months fast. And so I'm just thinking, if you don't put on fights like the UFC wants you to for 3 months, they're going to come to the fucking negotiating table. They're going to, as opposed to if you just go on stage and you just negotiate, or you just, cry about fighter pay. Dana's just going to say the same shit. Go start your own association. It's a great fucking response. Very well thought out, because he knows what it takes to create another competitor, and he'll probably just come buy you out if he's fearful of it. Why not band together and use the law of large numbers and the power of a 30 or 50% of the roster coming together and saying, hey, we're not fighting, and here's the benefits that we want. Here's the
I agree, but it's just so cutthroat.
It is, man.
Like you got kids to feed, and maybe my numbers were off a little bit, but let's say you made 60 and 60, and now they're offering you 200, guaranteed. I want 300. I want 350, but you'll do it for 200, right? I mean, you got kids to feed. You got a mortgage to pay. You got That's the hard part, I think.
For sure it is.
Is like the next guy behind you is up and coming, hungry. He wants it. He's got people to feed. He's got life to supply.
Sure,
and if you'll do it for less, it's just like, I think it's just cutthroat in the opposite way. Like me and you, like outside of this conversation, we don't have any ties to each other, right? So like these other fighters are the same way.
Sure.
You meet this guy, you might say hi to him, shake his hand, smile, and move on with yourself. But like, I don't think that there's like any tie to you. Like, you're saying no, but that's a yes for me. Your no is my yes.
100%.
That's money to my family. That's money to my people. But you're not looking at it from like, if we both say no and that guy says no, and that guy says no, then they'll have to come back to you and they'll say yes.
100%.
And then you'll get your 300 instead of having to try and settle for the 2, or you'll get your 500 or whatever it is. They'll pay you more. But I just don't think like people are seeing it from that perspective.
100%.
And I think it's gonna be hard to see it from that perspective, because more so than another individual sport like tennis or golf or something like that, is there's a certain ego mindset that has to come with fighting.
For sure.
Right? It's me or you, like literally, not like when you're playing golf. I want to win. It's strictly competitive.
But it's not that
when it comes to fighting, it's
trying to kill you.
There's like a primal approach from it.
For sure.
So when it comes to that side, I think the primal side maybe kicks out a little bit, or not even the competitive side, but the primal side kicks in a little bit, and they're just gonna choose them over short term. They're gonna choose right now me versus me in 5 years maybe.
You make such good points. I agree with you. And these are things that we have to think through, and these are definitely massive obstacles. One of the people, I don't want to name names for sake of privacy, but the people that I mentioned off air, we talked about this, and we said that there needs to be a slush fund created in which,
what's that?
Like just a fund that essentially is sitting there with cash, that when you go up to negotiate and fear that the UFC is going to use these business tactics to say, hey, we'll pay this other guy a little bit more to get him to. So we'll have this fund that will essentially feed the fighters to prevent them from bending over to the UFC. And, but that's difficult, trying to raise money. Like, I'm not going to ever fucking ask people to. I wouldn't put my money in this fucking slush fund because I don't know what guarantees are there. But one of the people that I spoke to mentioned this fund, and that's probably one of the ways that has to be implemented if they want to be successful. Yeah, we'll have to see, man.
It's really a tough subject, because like from the forefront, you just look at it and you're like, why don't all the athletes just get together and just say we'll put our foot down? But then you just got to look at it. You got to like just dissect the people and just an athlete's brain And it's like they're always gonna choose me over you.
Yeah.
And
it's not even. Yeah, you make again fucking beautiful points.
Tough. It's tough.
But also like the other component that I think gets often overlooked is the fact that most fighters, and I don't want to be a dick, but I'm a blunt motherfucker. Like they don't come from the best backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so they're just happy to be at the big show, the Bellators, the UFC. They're not trying to fucking risk anything for that. So, like, I remember one of the people who started or tried to start an association told me, he said, Parsa, don't waste your fucking time on these fighters. They're not going to sign. Yeah. I'm like, but why? And I was so naive, you know. I was like, why wouldn't they sign? And I didn't understand that, like, they don't have anything to fall back on.
Yeah.
Because I was always thinking of the 2011 NBA lockout, you know, and I'm like, I forgot, like, these motherfuckers have millions of dollars in the bank. Like, they can take a season off and renegotiate their contracts.
Yeah.
Fighters don't have that luxury. So you have to think of that in all
from that
factors.
Yeah.
I think inevitably, and you seem to be in agreement, that the sport is growing so much that the revenues are going to get so big that eventually the fighters will start to get more and more of it.
For sure.
But regardless, I just think that the percentage of revenue needs to be fair.
I agree, right? So like if we're just going to use the UFC because we've already talked about it, right? If they are at $1 million right now, and in 10 years, let's say they're at $2 million, right? That would mean like if the baseline contract right now is 10 and 10, then what if they just do 20 and 20?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? 20 and 20 sounds good. It's better for sure. That's definitely inflation. It definitely grew. But of that, maybe the number actually should be like 60.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Or like 50 and 50. But if the number was to go from 17%, like you're saying, at 2 million to like 30% at 2 million, you know what I mean? So it's a tough subject. And like I've thought a lot about it, like just chilling around the house and just like thinking like, why don't people like form a union? And my conclusion in my head, what I've come up with is just like what I've said to you. It's just that I think people, especially fighters, one, they're not the most financially savvy. So sometimes like they don't have the cushion to fall onto. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I've read and I've even talked to some fighters that forget that if I'm Bellator MMA and I give you $50,000, it's your job to set aside the taxes. You know,
we have a very bad job in this country of financial education.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people forget that part too.
Yeah.
You know, and then come April, they're like, hey,
you got Uncle Sam wants to cut.
You owe us $15,000 for taxes. And you're like, 15? I got to fight again. You know, so I don't know. I think a lot of people I think there's a lot of like little puzzle pieces to it. I think a lot of people aren't financial savvy. And then like the ego side behind it is never going to go away in a sport like fighting.
Yeah, man. I mean, every fighter I sit down with, it's so beautiful because I'm exposed to a different thought, and you're one of them. And I have to think of all these things. You know, I'm going to give it my all. I think that there's a lot of people that are advocates for you guys, and eventually it will happen. Hopefully it happens a lot sooner. But nevertheless, man, I'm so excited to see your career.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate our conversation.
Of course. Please come back after your next fight. Love to see you. And I'm sure I'll see you at the gym some more.
For sure.
All right, brother.
Do it.
Thanks, man.
You.
All right. Boom.